In the beginning, there was only darkness, no sun, no moon, no stars, just an endless, silent void. Then a voice echoed through the emptiness, "Let there be light." And instantly, a brilliant light shattered the darkness, separating day from night. On the second day, the heavens were stretched out, a vast expanse separating the waters above from the seas below. On the third, dry land pushed through the oceans, and the earth came alive with vibrant green trees and plants of every kind. The fourth day brought the sun, moon, and stars, setting them in the sky to mark the seasons and light the world. On the fifth, the seas swarmed with creatures, and birds took flight, filling the air with song. On the sixth, animals roamed the land, and in a final divine act, humanity was formed. On the seventh day, God looked upon all he had made, and it was good. He rested. This is the story of our beginning, a story of light, life, and love. After 6 days of creation, light and darkness, seas and sky, life and mankind, the work was complete. On the seventh day, God rested, not because he was weary, but because his creation was whole, perfect, good. God blessed the seventh day. He made it holy, a day set apart from all others. It became a rhythm of rest woven into the very heartbeat of the world. The seventh day was not an ending, but a beginning, a profound reminder that life is more than just labor, that creation itself is a precious gift, and that rest is sacred. This is Genesis. The day God rested, the day he blessed, the day he made holy. From the dust of the earth, God shaped man, and from his own breath life began. God formed Adam from the ground itself, breathing into his nostrils the breath of life, and Adam became a living soul. But it was not good for man to be alone. So, as Adam slept, God fashioned woman from his side, Eve, his companion, his equal. Together they were placed in Eden, a paradise of beauty where they walked with God as caretakers of his creation. And when all was finished, on the seventh day, God rested, blessing this time and setting it apart. This is the beginning of life, love, and rest. Imagine a perfect world, a garden where humanity walked side by side with God. This was Eden, a place of pure harmony, of complete innocence. But a single choice, a single moment of temptation, was about to shatter this perfect existence forever. The serpent's whisper was a subtle poison. Did God really say you can't eat from that tree? You won't die. Your eyes will be opened. You will be like God. The fruit looked good, promising wisdom. Eve took a bite, then gave some to Adam. In that moment, their innocence vanished. Shame washed over them, and for the first time, they hid from God. When God called, "Where are you?" their fear turned to blame. The perfect connection was broken. The judgment was swift, hardship, pain, and a return to dust. They were banished from the garden, the path back to the tree of life sealed. This was the fall. Yet, even in this great loss, a flicker of hope remained, a promise of a future Redeemer. The first brothers, the first offering, and the very first murder. This is the tragic story of Cain and Abel. Cain, the farmer, offered fruit from the soil he worked. Abel, the shepherd, brought the best of his flock. But only one offering found favor with God. As jealousy took root in Cain's heart, a dark warning was issued. Sin is crouching at your door. But Cain didn't listen. He led his brother into the field, and there the unthinkable happened. Cain rose up against Abel and killed him. When confronted by God, Cain defiantly asked, "Am I my brother's keeper?" This story of jealousy, sin, and consequence is a powerful reminder that our choices have weight. From the very first spark of humanity, a story began to unfold, a lineage stretching from Adam, the first man, through generations of fathers and sons, each one carrying a piece of that divine beginning. Adam's line continued through Seth, then Enosh, Kenan, Mahalalel, and Jared. In this long chain of life, one man, Enoch, stood apart. He walked so closely with God that one day he simply wasn't there anymore, for God took him away. The line continued through Enoch's son, Methuselah, who lived longer than any other, and his son, Lamech. Finally, Lamech had a son named Noah. By Noah's time, the world had changed. Humanity had grown, but so had its darkness. Yet amidst all the chaos, Noah was different. He was righteous and found favor in God's eyes. Through him, a new beginning was on the horizon. This is the incredible journey from Adam to Noah, a powerful story of life, legacy, and hope. As humanity spread across the face of the earth, something dark grew along with them. The seeds of disobedience sown in Eden had sprouted, and now its bitter fruit threatened to consume everything. The world had become a stage for rampant violence and endless corruption. The Bible tells us that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. God looked upon the world he had created, a world he had called good, and saw it stained and broken. The Lord was grieved to his heart. He saw the beautiful tapestry of creation unraveling because of human wickedness. In his sorrow and righteous anger, he declared, "I will wipe from the face of the earth the human race I have created." Yet even in the midst of this overwhelming darkness, a single light shone. A man named Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. He was righteous and walked faithfully with God. Through Noah and his family, a remnant would be saved. Judgment was on the horizon, but so was the promise of a new beginning. The Bible tells us that in the days of Noah, the earth was filled with people, but also with violence and corruption. Every thought of the human heart was only evil all the time. God looked upon his creation and was heartbroken. He decided to wipe the slate clean with a great flood. But amidst the darkness, one man stood out. Noah was a righteous man who walked faithfully with God. God made a covenant with him, a promise of salvation. He commanded Noah to build a massive ark, a floating refuge for his family and for pairs of every living creature. Noah obeyed. He built the ark exactly as instructed. Then, as the animals came 2 by 2, the rains began. For 40 days and 40 nights, water covered the entire earth, a judgment on a broken world. But inside the ark, protected by God's promise, hope survived. For 150 days, the waters prevailed upon the earth. Imagine a world submerged, a single vessel holding the future of life. But in the midst of the deep, God remembered Noah and all the creatures with him in the ark. A wind swept across the face of the waters, and they began to recede. The fountains of the deep were closed, the rains from heaven restrained. Slowly, miraculously, the floodwaters went down. On the 17th day of the 7th month, the ark came to rest upon the mountains of Ararat. As the waters continued to recede, the tops of the mountains became visible, a promise of solid ground. Noah, looking for a sign, sent out a raven and then a dove. The dove returned, finding no place to rest, but 7 days later it came back with a freshly plucked olive leaf. Hope. The waters had finally subsided from the earth. The flood had ended. A new beginning was on the horizon. The floodwaters had finally receded. Noah stepped out of the ark onto a cleansed earth, the first man of a new world. What happens when humanity gets a second chance? His first act was one of gratitude. Noah built an altar and offered a sacrifice to the Lord, and God responded with a promise that would change everything. He declared, "Never again will I destroy all living creatures as I have done. As long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will never cease." Then God blessed Noah and his family, commanding them to be fruitful and fill the earth. He established a new order, but with it came a solemn rule. Life is sacred. And as a sign of this unbreakable promise, God set his rainbow in the clouds. a beautiful, everlasting covenant between himself and all life on earth. From judgment came mercy, from destruction, a new beginning. The floodwaters had receded, leaving behind a world washed clean, ready for a new dawn. From the ark, one family stepped onto dry land, entrusted with the future of all humanity. Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. From them, the entire earth would be repopulated. Each son was destined to become the father of nations, their legacies woven into the very fabric of history. As a man of the soil, Noah planted a vineyard, but after drinking its wine, an incident unfolded in his tent that would forever alter the destiny of his children. Ham, seeing his father's vulnerability, acted disrespectfully. His brothers, Shem and Japheth, showed honor by covering their father without looking. When Noah awoke, he pronounced a curse upon Ham's son, Canaan, but bestowed blessings upon Shem and Japheth. These words would echo through generations, shaping the great nations and peoples to come. This story from Genesis tells of a new beginning, a family chosen to restart the world. From one family came every nation on earth. Genesis 10 isn't just a list of names, it's the table of nations, the divine blueprint for how the world was repopulated after the great flood. Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. From these 3, 70 distinct nations emerged, each with its own destiny, yet all sharing a single origin. The sons of Japheth spread out, settling the coastlands and distant isles, becoming the peoples of Europe and Asia Minor. Ham's descendants built mighty empires like Egypt and Babylon, and from his line came Nimrod, the first great warrior king. And from Shem's line, a promise unfolded, the line of Eber, leading to Abraham and the birth of a nation chosen for a special covenant. Genesis 10 reveals a world designed with purpose, 70 nations, one creator, and one shared beginning. Have you ever wondered why there are so many different languages in the world? The answer might surprise you, and it all goes back to a single tower. Once, the whole world spoke the same language. United, they decided to build a city with a tower so tall it would reach the heavens. They weren't just building a structure, they were building a monument to their own greatness, a way to make a name for themselves and avoid being scattered. But God saw their pride. He saw that their unity was aimed not at honoring him, but at defying him. So he came down and confused their language. Suddenly, a brother couldn't understand his brother. The construction ground to a halt amidst the chaos. From that place called Babel, humanity was scattered across the face of the earth, each group with its own new language. The tower was left unfinished, a powerful reminder that human pride has its limits. After the flood, the world began anew. Through Shem, son of Noah, a sacred promise would unfold, a lineage destined to lead to a man named Abram. This isn't just a list of names, it's the very thread of hope God wove through history. 2 years after the great flood, when Shem was 100 years old, his son Arpachshad was born. From this line came Shelah, and then Eber, the ancestor of the Hebrews. Generations passed. Peleg, Ro, Serug, Nahor, each name a vital link in a divine chain. This chain led to Terah, who became the father of 3 sons, Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Though their journey began in the great city of Ur, tragedy struck when Haran died. Terah then led his family, including Abram and his wife Sarai, toward the promised land of Canaan. They settled in a place called Haran, where Terah's journey ended, but Abram's was just about to begin. This sacred genealogy connects the flood to a future promise, setting the stage for a covenant that would bless all nations. From the chaos of the flood and the scattering of nations, the story of humanity narrows once again, focusing on a single family whose legacy will shape the world. We meet Terah, who became the father of 3 sons, Abram, Nahor, and Haran. They lived in the great city of Ur, but tragedy struck early as Haran died before his father, leaving behind his son, Lot. Abram married Sarai, and his brother Nahor married Milcah, but a shadow hung over Abram and Sarai's union. Sarai was unable to have children. This seemingly small detail would soon become the very heart of God's unfolding plan. Led by Terah, the family set out from Ur, their sights set on the distant land of Canaan. However, their journey paused in a city they named Haran, and there they settled. Terah lived to be 205, and he died in that new home, but the story was far from over. It was from this point that his son, Abram, would hear a divine call, a promise that would create nations and bless the entire world. From the scattered nations of Babel, the story of humanity narrows to focus on one man, a man called by God to leave everything he knew, his home, his family, his entire world, and step into the unknown. The Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country and your kindred to the land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing." At 75 years old, Abram obeyed. With his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, and all they owned, he left his home in Haran. When he arrived in the promised land of Canaan, the Lord appeared to him, saying, "To your offspring I will give this land." In response, Abram built an altar, a powerful symbol of his faith, in a promise that was yet to be fulfilled. His journey was just beginning, but his obedience set in motion a divine plan that would bless all nations. When a devastating famine swept through the land of Canaan, Abram, a man chosen by God, faced a critical decision. With his crops withering and the earth cracked and dry, he had no choice but to journey south, seeking refuge in the fertile land of Egypt. But as he and his beautiful wife Sarai neared the powerful kingdom, a deep fear took hold of Abram. He worried that the Egyptians, captivated by Sarai's beauty, would kill him to take her as their own. In a moment of weakness, he devised a plan. He told Sarai, "Please, tell them you are my sister, so that I will be treated well for your sake, and my life will be spared." Just as Abram feared, Sarai's beauty did not go unnoticed. She was taken into Pharaoh's own palace, and in return Abram was showered with riches. But God intervened. He afflicted Pharaoh and his entire household with terrible plagues because of Sarai. A furious Pharaoh summoned Abram, demanding, "What is this you have done to me? Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Now then, take her and go." So Abram and Sarai were sent away from Egypt, richer but humbled. This story reveals that even when human faith falters, God's faithfulness remains steadfast, protecting his promises and his people. Have you ever faced a tough choice where the easiest path looked the most appealing? That's exactly where Abram and Lot found themselves. Blessed with so much wealth, their flocks and herds became too numerous for the land to support. Tensions rose, and quarrels broke out between their herdsmen. Family harmony was at risk, but Abram, showing incredible humility, stepped in to make peace. He told his nephew Lot, "Let's not fight. We are family. The whole land is before you. You choose first. If you go left, I'll go right. If you go right, I'll go left." Lot looked up and saw the lush green valley of the Jordan, a seemingly perfect choice. He chose what looked best to his eyes and moved toward the city of Sodom. Abram, on the other hand, trusted in God. After Lot left, God reaffirmed his promise to Abram, giving him the entire land and promising descendants as countless as the dust of the earth. This story reminds us that choices based on sight can be deceiving, while choices based on faith lead to lasting blessings. In the ancient world, kings clashed in the valley of Siddim. 4 powerful rulers rose against 5, and amidst the chaos, Abram's nephew Lot was caught in the crossfire. When the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah were defeated, their cities were plundered, and Lot was taken captive. When a survivor brought the news to Abram, he didn't hesitate. He gathered 318 of his most trusted men and pursued the enemy. Under the cover of night, Abram launched a surprise attack, striking down the captors and rescuing Lot, along with all the other captives and their possessions. On his return, he was met by Melchizedek, the mysterious king of Salem, who blessed him. Abram, in turn, honored God by giving him a tenth of everything. He chose faith over earthly riches, proving his loyalty was to God alone. This is a story of courage, faith, and divine victory. After all the battles and all the blessings, Abram was still restless. He had wealth and honor, but the one thing he desperately wanted, an heir, was missing. It's in this moment of doubt in Genesis chapter 15 that God speaks to him in a vision. "Do not be afraid, Abram," God says. "I am your shield, your very great reward." But Abram's heart is heavy. He points out that his servant will inherit everything. God's response is immediate and powerful. "This man will not be your heir. A son from your own body will be." Then God takes him outside under the vast night sky and says, "Look up and count the stars, if you can. So shall your offspring be." And the Bible tells us Abram believed the Lord, and it was credited to him as righteousness. This chapter is a profound story of faith meeting an unshakable promise. 10 long years had passed since Abram and Sarai arrived in Canaan, clinging to God's promise of a great nation. But with each passing year, Sarai's hope faded, leaving only the bitter ache of barrenness. In her desperation, she devised a plan, offering her Egyptian servant, Hagar, to Abram. "Perhaps," she reasoned, "I can build a family through her." Abram agreed and Hagar conceived, but with new life came new conflict. Hagar began to look down on her mistress, and a resentful Sarai treated her so harshly that Hagar fled into the unforgiving wilderness, alone and pregnant. It was there, by a spring, that the angel of the Lord found her. He called her by name and promised that her son Ishmael would be the father of countless descendants. Hagar, overwhelmed, called God the God who sees me, for even in her darkest moment, she was not forgotten. It's a powerful reminder that even when human plans fail, God sees our pain and hears our cries. When Abram was 99 years old, a time when most stories end, his was just beginning. The Lord appeared to him, saying, "I am God Almighty. Walk before me and be blameless. I will make my covenant between me and you and will multiply you exceedingly." Abram fell on his face in awe. And God continued, "No longer shall your name be Abram, but your name shall be Abraham, for I have made you the father of many nations." His wife Sarai was also given a new name, Sarah, for she would be a mother of nations and kings. As a sign of this everlasting promise, God commanded that every male among them be circumcised, a physical mark of their sacred bond. Abraham laughed, wondering how a man of 100 years could father a child. But God was clear. Sarah would bear a son, and his name would be Isaac. That very day, Abraham obeyed, sealing the covenant and beginning a new chapter for all humanity. At 99 years old, Abraham had walked with God and received his covenant. But one crucial promise still felt distant, a son from his beloved wife Sarah. In a divine encounter, God declared a powerful change. "Your wife Sarai shall no longer be called Sarai, but Sarah. I will bless her and I will give you a son by her. She will be the mother of nations. Kings of peoples will come from her." Overwhelmed, Abraham fell to the ground and laughed in disbelief, thinking, "Can a child be born to a man 100 years old? Can Sarah, who is 90, really have a baby?" But God's response was firm. "No, Sarah your wife will bear you a son, and you will name him Isaac. My everlasting covenant will be with him. And while Ishmael will also be blessed, my covenant will be established with Isaac, born to Sarah at this very time next year." Have you ever wondered about the power of a single person's plea? After God promised Abraham a long-awaited son, he revealed a far more somber plan, the impending judgment of Sodom and Gomorrah. The outcry against their grave sin had reached the heavens. As the Lord prepared to investigate, a terrified yet resolute Abraham stepped forward. He dared to ask, "Will you really sweep away the righteous with the wicked? Shouldn't the judge of all the earth do what is right?" And so began an incredible negotiation. "What if there are 50 righteous people?" Abraham asked. God agreed to spare the city for 50. Abraham, gaining courage, bargained down. 45, then 40, 30, 20, and finally, just 10. Each time God patiently agreed. "For the sake of 10, he promised, I will not destroy it." This powerful moment reveals God's profound justice and mercy, and the incredible impact of one person's bold prayer for others. As judgment loomed over the wicked city of Sodom, God sent 2 angels on a rescue mission. Their destination? The house of Lot, Abraham's nephew. This is a story of divine mercy in the midst of fire and fury. Lot welcomed the heavenly visitors, but the city's depraved men surrounded his home with sinister intentions. In a flash of divine power, the angels struck the mob with blindness, revealing their true purpose. They warned Lot, "Flee! We are about to destroy this place. Get your family out, for the outcry against its evil has reached the heavens." At dawn, the angels physically dragged a hesitant Lot, his wife and his daughters out of the doomed city. "Escape for your life," they commanded. "Don't look back or you will be swept away." But as fire and brimstone rained from the sky, Lot's wife disobeyed. She looked back, longing for the life she left behind, and became a pillar of salt. A stark reminder that we cannot cling to what God has condemned. God's judgment was complete, but his mercy had saved the righteous. This powerful story shows that even when justice is severe, God's grace is always present for those who trust in him. Have you ever felt so scared and alone that you'd do anything to survive? After God's judgment rained down on Sodom and Gomorrah, that's exactly where Lot and his 2 daughters found themselves. Hiding in a desolate mountain cave, they believed they were the last people on earth. Their world had vanished in fire and smoke. With no other men in sight, they feared their family line would die with them. Panic set in. In their desperation, they hatched a shocking plan, a plan born from fear, not faith. The older sister convinced the younger that their only hope was to have children by their own father. So, night after night, they got Lot drunk and lay with him. From this desperate act, 2 nations were born, the Moabites and the Ammonites, who would become rivals of Israel for centuries. It's a dark, complicated story that shows how fear can lead us down paths we'd never imagine. What do you think this story teaches us about desperation and faith? Let me know in the comments below. After leaving the ruins of Sodom, Abraham and Sarah journeyed to the land of Gerar, but fear once again caused Abraham to make a terrible mistake. He told everyone that his wife Sarah was actually his sister. Hearing this, Abimelech, the king of Gerar, took Sarah into his royal palace, but God's plan would not be thwarted so easily. That very night, God came to Abimelech in a dream, warning him, "You are as good as dead because of the woman you have taken. She is a married woman." The terrified king pleaded his innocence, explaining that Abraham himself had lied. God acknowledged Abimelech's integrity, but commanded him to return Sarah immediately, for Abraham was a prophet whose prayer would save him. The next morning, a furious Abimelech confronted Abraham, who admitted he acted out of fear for his own life. Abimelech restored Sarah to Abraham, blessing them with gifts. This story shows that even when we fail, God's faithfulness and protection never do. Have you ever waited for something so long you almost gave up hope? Imagine waiting decades for a promised child. At last, the promise was fulfilled. The Lord was gracious to Sarah, and in their old age, she and Abraham welcomed their son Isaac, whose name means laughter. Sarah declared, "God has brought me laughter, and everyone who hears will laugh with me." But this joy was soon mixed with conflict. At a feast, Sarah saw Ishmael, Hagar's son, mocking Isaac. Distressed, she demanded they be sent away. Abraham was heartbroken, but God assured him, saying, "Do as Sarah says, I will also make a nation of Ishmael." In the wilderness, their water ran out, and Hagar wept, believing all was lost. But God heard their cries. An angel appeared, revealing a well of water and promising to make Ishmael a great nation. This chapter reveals a God of promises fulfilled and provider in the desert. Even in hardship, he makes a way. Imagine being asked to give up the one thing you love most. This was the ultimate test God gave to Abraham. "Take your son," God said, "your only son, Isaac, whom you love, and offer him as a sacrifice." Early the next morning, Abraham set out on a 3-day journey, his heart heavy, but his faith unwavering. As they neared the mountain, Isaac, carrying the wood for the offering, turned to his father. "Father," he asked, "we have the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb?" Abraham's reply was filled with trust. "God himself will provide the lamb, my son." At the summit, just as Abraham raised the knife, an angel's voice boomed from heaven. "Abraham, do not harm the boy." A ram, caught in a nearby thicket, became the offering instead. This incredible act of faith shows us that even in our darkest moments, God provides. Abraham's trust not only saved his son, but also reaffirmed a divine promise for all generations to come. Sarah lived for 127 years, a matriarch of faith. When she passed away in Hebron, Abraham's grief was immense. He had lost his life partner, the mother of the promised nation. Rising from his mourning, Abraham approached the Hittite elders. "I am a foreigner among you," he said, "but please grant me a place to bury my dead." The Hittites, showing great respect, told him, "You are a mighty prince among us. Take the best of our tombs for your own." But Abraham had a specific place in mind, the cave of Machpelah, which belonged to a man named Ephron. Ephron generously offered to give him the field and the cave for free. Abraham, however, insisted on paying its full value, establishing a permanent and legal claim. He paid 400 shekels of silver, securing the land as his own. And so Abraham buried Sarah in the cave of Machpelah. This act was more than just a burial, it was a profound statement of faith. It was the very first piece of the promised land secured by Abraham, a tangible sign that God's covenant was already taking root in the earth. Abraham, blessed by God, had one remaining task, to find a wife for his son Isaac. He made his servant swear a solemn oath. "Do not take a wife for my son from the Canaanites. Go to my country, to my kindred, and find a wife for Isaac." Trusting in God's guidance, the servant departed. Arriving at a well in the city of Nahor, the servant prayed, "O Lord, let the young woman who offers water to me and my camels be the one you have chosen." Before he could even finish, Rebekah appeared. She not only gave the servant a drink, but also hurried to draw water for all 10 of his camels, a sign of extraordinary kindness. Knowing his prayer was answered, the servant explained his mission to her family. With their blessing and Rebekah's courageous, "I will go," the journey back began. Isaac met her, brought her into his tent, and he loved her. This is a beautiful story of answered prayer and God's perfect timing. Genesis 25 marks both a somber ending and a dramatic new beginning. We witness the passing of the great patriarch Abraham, but even as he is laid to rest, a new chapter unfolds through his son, Isaac. After Sarah's death, Abraham had more children with his wife Keturah, but he secured the covenant promise by giving everything he owned to Isaac. At the ripe old age of 175, Abraham died and was buried by his sons, Isaac and Ishmael, a brief moment of unity. The chapter then details the generations of Ishmael, 12 tribes spreading across the desert. But the core of our story shifts to Isaac and his wife Rebekah. She was barren, so Isaac prayed earnestly for a child. God answered, but the pregnancy was so difficult that Rebekah cried out in distress. The Lord revealed a prophecy to her. Two nations were struggling inside her, and the older would ultimately serve the younger. This set the stage for one of history's most famous sibling rivalries. Famine gripped the land, a harsh trial that echoed the days of Abraham. Isaac stood at a crossroads, facing the same test of faith his father once knew. But even in the dust and despair, God's promise was an anchor. The Lord appeared to Isaac, his voice a beacon in the uncertainty. "Do not go to Egypt," he commanded. "Dwell in this land, and I will be with you and bless you. For to you and your descendants I will give all these lands, fulfilling the oath I swore to your father, Abraham." Yet, human fear is a powerful force. In Gerar, Isaac faltered, claiming his wife Rebekah was his sister to protect himself. When King Abimelech discovered the truth, he was aghast at the risk Isaac had brought upon his people. Despite this, Isaac sowed his fields and reaped 100-fold. The Lord's blessing made him incredibly wealthy, but it also stirred the envy of the Philistines. He reopened the wells his father had dug, only to face contention and hostility. Finally, he found a place of peace, a well he named Rehoboth, meaning room, for the Lord had made a way for him to flourish. At Beersheba, God reaffirmed his covenant, and even Abimelech came to make peace, seeing plainly that the Lord was with Isaac. This story shows that through famine, fear, and conflict, God's faithfulness endures. He keeps his promises and makes room for his people to prosper. When Isaac was old and his eyes had grown dim, he called for Esau, his firstborn son, to give him a final blessing. But what followed was a gripping tale of deception, favoritism, and a destiny that would change the course of history. Isaac asked Esau to hunt and prepare a savory meal so he could bless him before he died. But Rebekah, Isaac's wife, overheard. Favoring her younger son Jacob, she devised a cunning plan. She cooked a meal herself and disguised Jacob, covering his smooth skin with goatskins to mimic his hairy brother Esau. Trembling, Jacob went to his blind father. "The voice is Jacob's voice," Isaac said, confused, "but the hands are the hands of Esau." Deceived, Isaac gave Jacob the coveted blessing of the firstborn. Just as Jacob left, Esau returned. The truth came crashing down, and Esau let out a bitter cry. The deception was complete, setting in motion a family feud that would last for generations. Have you ever felt like you were running away from your problems, completely alone? That's exactly where Jacob was. Fleeing from his angry brother Esau, he left home with nothing but a staff in his hand and a heavy heart. But his father Isaac had sent him off with a powerful blessing, the same promise God made to Abraham. One night, exhausted from his journey, Jacob lay down to sleep with a rock for a pillow. But this wasn't just any night. He dreamed of a magnificent staircase stretching from earth all the way to heaven, with angels going up and down. And standing above it was God himself, who promised, "I am with you. I am. The land you're on will be yours, and your descendants will bless the world. I will not leave you." Jacob woke up in absolute awe, realizing God was right there with him. He named that place Bethel, meaning house of God, and made a vow to follow the Lord, who had met him in his loneliest moment. It's a powerful reminder that even when we're on the run, God is always ready to meet us and turn our fear into faith. Running from his brother's fury, Jacob arrived in a foreign land, exhausted and alone. But at a well in Haran, he wasn't just seeking refuge. He was about to find love, a grueling 7-year labor, and a heartbreak that would echo through generations. There, he saw Rachel, a shepherdess, and his own kin. In that moment, filled with a strength he didn't know he had, he rolled away the heavy stone from the well and watered her flock. He then wept, realizing he had found his family and the woman who had instantly captured his heart. He struck a deal with her father, Laban. "I will work for you for 7 years in return for your younger daughter, Rachel." To Jacob, those 7 years felt like only a few days, so deep was his love for her. But on his wedding night he was deceived. Laban gave him Leah, the older sister, instead. In the morning's light, Jacob's joy turned to anguish. His deception had come back to haunt him. Ever felt like you're in a competition you never signed up for? For Rachel, her rival was her own sister, Leah. Though beloved by her husband Jacob, Rachel was barren, while Leah had many sons. This is the story of two sisters caught in a desperate struggle for family, honor, and a place in history. Rachel's heartache drove her to cry out to Jacob, "Give me children or I die." In her desperation, she gave her maid, Bilhah, to Jacob, who bore 2 sons, but Leah wouldn't be outdone. She gave her own maid, Zilpah, to Jacob, and she too had sons. The rivalry escalated, with children becoming bargaining chips in a painful family drama. Yet through all the human scheming and jealousy, a divine plan was unfolding. God's promise to Abraham was being built, one child at a time, through this complicated, messy, but ultimately blessed family. 20 years of service, a growing family, and flocks that stretched as far as the eye could see. Jacob had built a life in Haran, but the tension was thick enough to cut. His father-in-law, Laban, looked at him with envy, not love. It was then that God spoke, "Return to the land of your fathers, and I will be with you." Jacob confided in his wives, Rachel and Leah. He told them how Laban had changed his wages 10 times, but God had turned every scheme into a blessing. United, they agreed to leave. While Laban was away, Jacob gathered his family and all he owned and fled. But Rachel made a fateful decision. She stole her father's household gods. When Laban discovered their escape, he pursued them for 7 days. But God warned him in a dream not to harm Jacob. In a tense standoff, Laban accused Jacob of theft. Jacob, unaware of Rachel's actions, invited him to search. The idols remained hidden, and the 2 men finally made a covenant, a heap of stones to mark the boundary between them. Jacob was finally free, heading back to the land of promise. After 2 long decades, Jacob was finally heading home. But peace was the last thing on his mind. A shadow from his past loomed large. His twin brother, Esau, the man he had deceived, the man who had sworn to kill him. Fear gripped Jacob's heart when his messengers returned with chilling news. Esau is coming, and he's bringing 400 men with him. Terrified, Jacob split his entire camp in 2, hoping at least half might survive the impending attack. He fell to his knees, praying, "Oh God, I am unworthy, but please deliver me from my brother's hand." That night, alone by the river Jabbok, a mysterious man appeared and wrestled with him until dawn. Despite his hip being wrenched from its socket, Jacob refused to let go, demanding a blessing. The man replied, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you have struggled with God and with men and have overcome." Jacob left that encounter with a limp, but also with a new name and a powerful blessing. Transformed from a man of fear into one who had met God face to face and lived. After 20 long years apart, Jacob was terrified. He was about to face his brother Esau, the very man he had cheated and fled from. Esau was coming with 400 men. Was this a reunion or an execution? As they drew near, Jacob, filled with dread, bowed to the ground not once, but 7 times. He had prepared for the worst. But what happened next was a miracle. Instead of a sword, Esau offered an embrace. He ran to Jacob, threw his arms around his neck, and they both wept. The bitterness of 2 decades washed away in a moment of pure grace. Esau welcomed Jacob's family, and though he at first refused Jacob's lavish gifts, he eventually accepted them as a sign of their renewed bond. This powerful story shows us that no rift is too wide for forgiveness to bridge. It's a beautiful picture of reconciliation, turning fear into peace. Have you ever heard the story of Dinah? She was Jacob's only daughter, and her story in Genesis is one of passion, deception, and shocking revenge. It starts with Dinah going out to visit the local women, but this innocent trip takes a dark turn when Shechem, a prince of the land, violates her. He then falls in love with her and asks his father to arrange a marriage. Dinah's brothers, Simeon and Levi, are consumed by rage. When Shechem's family proposes marriage and an alliance, the brothers see an opportunity for vengeance. They agree, but only on one condition. Every man in Shechem city must be circumcised. The men agree, but on the third day, while they are all in pain and vulnerable, Simeon and Levi attack. They slaughter every man in the city, including Shechem and his father, and rescue their sister. This brutal act of revenge leaves a dark stain on Jacob's family, a powerful and tragic story of justice and fury. Have you ever felt the need to start over, to go back to a place where you first felt a real connection to something bigger than yourself? After a dark and violent chapter in Shechem, God calls Jacob to do just that. It's a call to return to Bethel, the very spot where he once dreamt of a ladder to heaven. This journey isn't just about changing locations. It's a pilgrimage of the heart, a chance to purify and worship. Jacob commands his entire household, "Get rid of the foreign gods you have with you and purify yourselves." It's a powerful moment of cleansing. They hand over their idols and charms, and Jacob buries them, making a clean break from the past. As they journey, a divine protection falls upon them, and they travel safely to Bethel. There, Jacob builds an altar, reaffirming his covenant. God appears again, blessing him and renaming him Israel, a promise for a great nation to come. Have you ever wondered what happened to Esau, Jacob's brother? Genesis chapter 36 tells us this isn't just a list of names, it's the story of a nation. Esau, also known as Edom, settled in the rugged mountains of Seir because the land couldn't support both his and Jacob's massive herds. From his wives and sons, Eliphaz, Reuel, and others, sprang the chiefs of the Edomites. These clans, like Teman and Amalek, grew powerful, establishing their own territories. Interestingly, long before Israel had a king, a succession of kings reigned in Edom, men like Bela and Jobab. Genesis 36 reminds us that Esau's descendants built a strong and enduring nation, a key player in the history of the ancient world. Their story is a vital part of the larger biblical narrative. Have you ever felt like your family was a little complicated? Meet Joseph. At 17, he was his father's favorite, and he had the fancy coat to prove it. But being the favorite came with a heavy price, the jealousy of his 10 older brothers. Things got worse when Joseph started sharing his dreams where his family bowed down to him. His brothers' jealousy turned to pure hatred. So, when their father sent Joseph to check on them in the fields, they saw their chance. "Here comes the dreamer," they sneered. They stripped him of his coat, threw him into a pit, and sold him to passing traders for 20 pieces of silver. To cover their tracks, they dipped his coat in goat's blood and told their father a wild animal had killed him. Joseph was sold into slavery in Egypt. His family thought him dead, and it seemed like his dreams were over. But this was only the beginning. While Joseph was being carried off to Egypt, a darker, more complicated story was unfolding back home. This is the story of Judah, one of the brothers who sold Joseph, and a woman named Tamar, whose courage would change the course of history. Judah married a Canaanite woman and had 3 sons, Onan, and Shelah. He arranged for his firstborn, to marry Tamar. But was wicked, and the Lord took his life. Judah then told his second son, Onan, to fulfill his duty and give his brother an heir. But Onan selfishly refused, and he too was struck down. Fearing for his last son, Judah sent Tamar away, promising to give her to Shelah when he was older, a promise he never intended to keep. Left forgotten and her future denied, Tamar took matters into her own hands. Disguised, she tricked Judah himself into giving her a child. When her pregnancy was discovered and she was sentenced to death, she revealed Judah's own signet and staff as proof of the father's identity. Humbled, Judah declared, "She is more righteous than I." Tamar gave birth to twins, and from one of them, Perez, came the royal line leading to King David and ultimately the Messiah. This incredible story shows how even in the midst of human failure and sin, God's plan for redemption prevails. Have you ever felt like life just keeps throwing punches? Sold into slavery in a foreign land, this was Joseph's reality. But a strange thing happened. Even as a slave, the Lord was with him, and everything he touched prospered. His master Potiphar saw this incredible favor and put Joseph in charge of his entire household. For Joseph's sake, a blessing came over everything Potiphar owned. But with great blessing came a great test. Potiphar's wife tried to seduce him day after day. Joseph refused, asking, "How could I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" One day, she grabbed his cloak and he fled. Furious, she falsely accused him, and Joseph was thrown into prison. Yet even in the darkest prison, the Lord was with Joseph. He found favor with the warden and was put in charge of all the prisoners. Joseph's story shows that no matter the circumstances, integrity and faith invite God's presence, turning every trial into a testimony. Have you ever felt forgotten, stuck in a place you didn't deserve, waiting for a breakthrough? That's exactly where Joseph was. Betrayed by his brothers and wrongly imprisoned, his future looked bleak. But even in the darkest prison cell, a divine plan was unfolding. One day, two of Pharaoh's most important officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, were thrown into the same prison. They both had bizarre, troubling dreams and had no idea what they meant. Seeing their distress, Joseph, filled with God-given wisdom, stepped in. He told them, "Don't interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." The cupbearer went first, describing a dream of a vine with 3 branches and ripe grapes, which he pressed into Pharaoh's cup. Joseph's interpretation was good news. "In 3 days, you'll be restored to your position." But for the baker, who dreamed of birds eating bread from a basket on his head, the news was grim. "In 3 days, Joseph said, Pharaoh will have you executed." And everything happened exactly as Joseph had foretold. The cupbearer was freed, but he forgot the man who gave him hope. Joseph remained in prison, forgotten by man, but never by God. This was all part of a much bigger story. Have you ever had a dream that felt so real it shook you to your core? Imagine being the most powerful man in the world, Pharaoh of Egypt, and having 2 such dreams in one night. He saw 7 fat, healthy cows get devoured by 7 sickly, thin ones. Then 7 full heads of grain were swallowed up by 7 withered stalks. No one in his kingdom could tell him what it meant. Then a forgotten prisoner named Joseph was brought before him. Joseph didn't take the credit. He said, "It is not in me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer." He explained that the dreams were a warning from God. 7 years of incredible harvest would be followed by 7 years of devastating famine. He advised Pharaoh to store up grain during the good years. Pharaoh was so impressed that he made Joseph second in command over all of Egypt. From a forgotten prisoner to a ruler of a nation, Joseph's story shows how faith and wisdom can change a destiny. When famine gripped the land of Canaan, Jacob's family was starving. Their only hope? Egypt, where there was plenty of grain. Jacob told his sons, "Why are you just standing around? Go to Egypt and buy us some food so we don't die." So 10 of his sons set off, but Jacob kept his youngest, Benjamin, at home, terrified that something terrible might happen to him too. In Egypt, the brothers came face to face with the governor, bowing down low before him. They had no idea it was their long-lost brother, Joseph. He recognized them instantly, but spoke harshly, accusing them of being spies. They pleaded their innocence, explaining they were 12 brothers, but one was gone, and the youngest was with their father. Joseph decided to test them. He kept one brother, Simeon, as a hostage and sent the others back with grain, telling them to return with their youngest brother to prove their story. What will they do? The famine grew severe in the land. When the grain they had brought from Egypt was gone, Jacob told his sons to go back and buy more. But Judah reminded him, "The man warned us, 'You shall not see my face unless your brother is with you.'" Jacob was torn, but Judah pledged his own life for Benjamin's safety, promising to bear the blame forever if he didn't return. Reluctantly, Jacob agreed. He sent them with the best gifts the land could offer: balm, honey, spices, nuts, and double the silver to repay the money they found in their sacks. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he ordered his steward to prepare a feast at his home. The brothers were terrified, thinking it was a trap over the returned silver. But the steward reassured them, "Peace be with you, your God has given you treasure." And he brought Simeon out to them. They washed their feet, prepared their gifts, and waited for Joseph to arrive. Have you ever felt like you've passed a major test, only to face an even bigger one? Joseph's brothers certainly did. They thought their troubles in Egypt were over, loaded with grain and heading home. But Joseph, the brother they once betrayed, had one final heart-wrenching test planned. He ordered his steward to hide his personal silver cup in the sack of his youngest brother, Benjamin. Soon after they left, the steward caught up with them, accusing them of theft. Confident in their innocence, the brothers declared that whoever had the cup should die, and the rest would become slaves. Imagine their horror when the steward searched their bags and one by one came to the last and pulled the cup from Benjamin's sack. They were dragged back before Joseph. This was the ultimate test. Would they abandon Benjamin just as they had abandoned Joseph years ago? This time, Judah stepped forward, offering his own life in exchange for his brother's freedom. It's a powerful story of transformation and sacrifice. The brothers stood before Egypt's powerful ruler, completely unaware of who he truly was. The man they had sold into slavery years ago was now the second most powerful man in the land. But Joseph could no longer hold it in. The moment of revelation had finally come. He ordered everyone to leave the room. Alone with his brothers, he wept so loudly that the entire palace could hear him. "I am Joseph!" he cried out. "Is my father still alive?" His brothers were frozen in terror, speechless. But Joseph reassured them, "Don't be angry with yourselves for what you did. It wasn't you who sent me here, but God. He sent me ahead to save lives. What they intended for evil, God used for an incredible good." This powerful story shows us that even in our darkest moments, a greater plan might be unfolding. Have you ever faced a decision so big it terrified you? That's exactly where Jacob found himself. He had just learned his long-lost son, Joseph, was alive and ruling in Egypt. But leaving the promised land, the land God had given his fathers, felt like a betrayal. Would God abandon him if he went? In a moment of deep uncertainty at Beersheba, Jacob offered sacrifices. And that night, God spoke to him in a vision, saying, "Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for there I will make you into a great nation. I myself will go down with you." With this incredible promise, Jacob's fear turned to faith. He gathered his entire family, 70 souls in all, and began the journey. Imagine the scene. Wagons, livestock, and generations of a family, all moving towards a new future. When they finally reached Goshen, Joseph rushed to meet his father. Their tearful reunion is one of the most moving moments in the entire Bible. Jacob, holding his son, finally said, "Now let me die, since I have seen your face, and know you are still alive." This journey, born from fear, ended in fulfillment, setting the stage for Israel to become a great nation, just as God promised. As the famine gripped the land, a glimmer of hope emerged from Egypt. Joseph, through his divine wisdom, not only saved a nation, but also paved the way for his own family's survival. Imagine this. After years of separation and hardship, Jacob's sons stand before the mighty Pharaoh. This single moment would set the course for the entire nation of Israel. Joseph, now a powerful ruler, presented his brothers to Pharaoh. They humbly identified themselves as shepherds and asked to settle in the land of Goshen. Pharaoh not only agreed, but offered them the best land and even positions overseeing his own livestock. Then the aged patriarch Jacob was brought in. He blessed Pharaoh, sharing that his 130 years had been few and difficult. It was a powerful meeting of a shepherd patriarch and a divine king, both acknowledging a higher power. Have you ever wondered why there are 12 tribes of Israel, but no tribe of Joseph? The answer lies in a powerful story of blessing, adoption, and divine reversal. As Jacob's life drew to a close, Joseph brought his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, to his bedside. In a surprising move, Jacob declared, "Your 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, shall be mine." By adopting them, Jacob elevated Joseph's family, giving him a double portion, 2 tribes in Israel instead of 1. When it came time for the blessing, Joseph placed his firstborn, Manasseh, at Jacob's right hand for the greater blessing. But Jacob intentionally crossed his arms, placing his right hand on the younger son, Ephraim. Joseph protested, but Jacob insisted, prophesying that while Manasseh would be great, his younger brother would become even greater. This moment shows that God's plans often defy human expectations, choosing whom he wills to fulfill his sovereign purpose. Jacob's life was coming to an end. But before he passed, he summoned his 12 sons to speak blessings, warnings, and prophecies that would shape the future of an entire nation. To Reuben, his firstborn, Jacob spoke of lost potential. "Unstable as water, you shall not excel." To Simeon and Levi, he declared their violence would lead to their tribes being scattered. But for Judah, the words were filled with honor. "The scepter shall not depart from Judah. To him shall be the obedience of the peoples." From Judah's line would come kings and ultimately the Messiah. Each son received a unique prophecy, foretelling the destiny of his descendants, from Zebulun by the sea to Joseph, the fruitful vine. Jacob's final act was to secure his legacy, a testament to God's enduring promise through his family. The story of Genesis closes with tears, forgiveness, and an unshakable faith. After the death of his father Jacob, Joseph weeps, not just in sorrow, but in reverence for a life lived under God's promise. The Egyptians themselves mourn for 70 days, a testament to the respect Jacob had earned. With Pharaoh's blessing, Joseph leads a massive procession back to Canaan to bury his father in the family tomb. But with their father gone, Joseph's brothers are terrified. They fear he will finally take revenge for selling him into slavery. They fall at his feet, begging for mercy. But Joseph's response is one of the most powerful moments in Scripture. He weeps and says, "Do not be afraid. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." This is radical forgiveness, rooted in seeing God's sovereign hand in all things. Genesis ends here, but the story is far from over. It's a cliffhanger, a promise of a future deliverance that will be told in the book of Exodus.